Today we're going to take a nice walk down Pomona Avenue. No, we're not going to go to Pomona, but we're going to do our stroll right here on Brea Boulevard, because Pomona Avenue is what Brea Boulevard was called until 1960. First though, so you can get a feel for the history of this street, we're going to look at a group of photographs that were taken to see just how this street has changed since 1917. Strangely, most of those photographs were from the south looking north, so we're going to start with those first. And now for the few photographs looking south. And now one last photograph, and it's looking both north and south. Now that you've seen a lot of the outsides of buildings, we're going to discover Brea in a new sort of way by going inside some of them using photographs I've gathered over the last couple of months. So let's start our walk then on the east side of the street at the old Brea Hotel, which was built of wood in 1912 and over the years has also been called the Kinsler Hotel, where hotel records show a room renting for 50 or 75 cents, and in 1936 the new Sherman Hotel. For part of the 70s, it also had a name I can't even pronounce. Well, back in 1990, just for the heck of it, I decided to go upstairs and do a bit of exploring. By then, though, the hotel wasn't in the greatest of shape. The little rooms were still there, though, lining the main halls, and around the corner were the communal showers. Just south of the hotel, here at the corner of Brea and Ash, was one of the first buildings in town, a department store, where you could buy all sorts of things. And they even gave you green stamps. Many years later, it was Brea Hardware that moved in, and even later, Canning's Hardware, where it was said you could usually find that one item you couldn't find anywhere else. In the 1920s, the Brea Bakery was the place to go in town if you wanted freshly made bread, rolls, and all that other great fattening stuff. The building it was in had been built in 1920 by baker George Schubert, and he ran the business with the help of his nephew, who got stuck doing all the work George didn't want to do. A couple buildings down, the new Oil Fields National Bank opened in 1926 with first day festivities in what was to become its 2-year temporary location. 5 years earlier, the big 2-story Craig building rose on Pomona Avenue, providing an upstairs community hall where the Chamber of Commerce had its meetings, and a downstairs, modern and fully equipped drugstore where you could sit at the counter, enjoy an ice cream soda, or maybe a cup of coffee. I think it's interesting that when the Craig building was demolished in 1991, workmen discovered the old tile floor from the original drugstore, which hadn't been seen for decades. The Red Lantern Movie and Vaudeville Theater opened its doors to its first customers in 1922, with ticket prices a bit lower than they are today. The theater even made room on its stage for high school drama and musical presentations before the new Brea Olinda High School with its auditorium was built on Birch Street. Over the years, the theater was remodeled and renamed the Brea Theater and continued to be a really popular place to go on a Friday or Saturday night. In the 1970s, though, it closed and then reopened next to the Shepherd Community Church as an adult movie theater. As you can imagine, that wasn't too popular in town. But soon things changed, and the theater was taken over by the church and used as its new meeting place. In the 1950s, Haddad's Haberdashery, with its nice-looking and interesting show windows out front, was where you went in Brea to get that green and yellow Letterman's jacket to impress the girls. A little south of the Haddad's building at the northeast corner of Pomona Avenue and Birch was the old Brea Central Garage built in 1920. But in the 1950s, it was the Doherty Chevrolet building, where you could go inside and get a close-up look at the newest model, or maybe even go for a test drive. Right behind the dealership on Birch Street was a tiny building that you just might miss if you blinked. But beginning in 1925, it housed the Brea Telephone Exchange, where a line of operators sat in front of their switchboards, ready to take and transfer all calls coming in or going out of town. I'm back here on Brea Boulevard, or Pomona Avenue again, and right about where I'm standing in front of the present Tower Records was once the brown, glazed brick Baldwin Ford dealership building, where, if you had the money, you could buy that special car you've been dreaming about. Later, though, another business took over, one most people don't think about us ever having here in Brea. It was a bowling alley, which opened in 1946, a year after the end of World War II, and stayed open through most of the 1950s. All right, I moved on just south of Imperial Highway, and I have a question for you. If you're lucky, what do most meals end with? Dessert, right? And that's how this segment is also going to end, because did you know, right back there where this car wash is, we actually had at one time our own Tasty Freeze? I know it's exciting, right? During the 50s and 60s, it was the happening place in town, where you went to meet friends, make friends, or just act crazy and drink a chocolate dip cone with your buddies. So that was our tour, at least the first part of it, but we still haven't walked up the west side of the street, and over there are some of my favorite and most historic buildings. So until we do, and we take another look back through time, I'm Brian Saul for this Did You Know segment of Video Brea Line.